Hi YouTube, this is Lucy from KBeautyHobbit.com, and today's video is about skincare, hair care, and makeup ingredients that I avoid and why I avoid them. So I'm filming two videos today and I'm not exactly sure which one I'm going to put up first. This one or my December empties video, probably this one. So if you're watching this and last week I missed a video, my apologies for that, but I had a horrible cold. I'm still recovering. I had absolutely no voice, which is why I'm making two videos today so that I'm prepared and have one up my sleeve so that this never happens again, because I was left without a video and with absolutely no means to film it because I had no voice. So if you read my blog, KBeautyHobbit.com, you'll notice that in just about every review, I try to put at the very end a list of ingredients. And I do that because if I were reading a review, that's the one thing I would definitely want to see is a list of ingredients. And sometimes I struggle finding those because with Korean skincare, the websites that sell them, eBay and the big stores even that ship directly from Korea, they very rarely list ingredients, almost never. And I am so grateful when they do. But it is very difficult for me sometimes to find this information, and I do look for specific things that are beneficial, that I'm looking for in terms of benefit to the skin, the ingredients that I actively seek out. But even more so, I look at the ingredients list to make sure that it doesn't contain the things that I absolutely always avoid. So today I'm going to talk about those and why I avoid them. And just as a disclaimer, a reminder, I'm not a dermatologist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a chemist. I am none of those things. I'm an accountant who reads a lot and who is passionate about skincare, and I'm definitely a nerd, so I do like to read, PubMed and things like that. I like to read scientific studies, I like to read the source literature, but that doesn't mean that I am absolutely qualified to advise anybody. So this video is just my opinions. This is what I do and why I do it. You can absolutely have a different opinion and do something else and have that work for you. I don't think there's any reason to argue with me because you're probably not going to change my mind. The things that I avoid for a reason. And I'm not going to argue with you in turn. I'm not going to try and change your mind. If you think these things are safe, if your body of evidence tells you that this is okay, then go for it. Because you know what? It's a free world, or at least it's a free country here. So go ahead and do you. Well, the first thing that I always avoid is BHT. And it's just listed in the ingredients as those three letters, BHT. It is a preservative or an antioxidant, which is why it is added to certain skincare to prolong the shelf life. However, it does get absorbed through the skin, and it also gets metabolized if you ingest it orally, which hopefully we're not eating our skincare. However, one can see how something can end up in your mouth, if you're using something on your lips or if you're applying something with your hands and then eating a snack afterwards. Potential is there. And in lab studies, in lab rats, BHT caused liver and kidney damage. It also had tumor promoting effects. And one can argue that the doses that are used in cosmetics are safe. But all too many times, just think to the recent recalls of the children's cold medicine, what's listed on the label might not be exactly what is actually in the model. And not to mention that the labels don't ever list the concentration of BHT, it just says BHT. And my most overwhelming, overruling, governing kind of law that I live by is if something makes me nervous, I don't do it. It might be absolutely safe. That might be absolutely okay. But if there's something nagging at me in the back of my mind saying, this might not be safe, this is actually probably toxic, that thought alone causes me stress, and stress, of course, is not good. Plus, there's this whole mind-body connection of, if we think something's bad for us, it can actually manifest itself in some kind of symptom. Anyway, I won't get too much into the psychosomatics of this, but basically BHT makes me nervous because it has shown to have tumor promoting effects, because it has liver toxicity and kidney toxicity. And I understand that we're not lab rats. However, these are still living things that are reacting this way. And of course, most tests are not done on humans, so I avoid BHT. The next big one, and probably something you've heard about, are parabens. Parabens are another type of preservative that are used in skincare and hair care, and sometimes even in medications. I've seen them listed on like cold and flu medicine before, and some argue that parabens are safe. Now, not all parabens are the same. If you go to EWG Skin Deep database, for example, and type in paraben, it will pop out with all the different kinds. Like there's methylparaben and some other ones, and they all have different safety ratings. I, as a rule, avoid all of them. Some rare exceptions, if it's something like topical for hair, for example, that I only apply like to the ends of my hair and then rinse off, then maybe I'm okay with parabens. But in general, I avoid that. Anything that ends in paraben. And the reason being is they are synthetic estrogens that can disrupt the thyroid function. And I'm not a doctor, but basically thyroid, the endocrine system, affects so many things, from how our hair grows to our weight to a lot of different things. And that is not something that I want to stress out in my body. And then because of being a synthetic estrogen, parabens can actually stimulate the growth of certain estrogen sensitive breast tumors. And I thankfully do not have any personal experience for me with breast cancer, but we've had some instances in the family, and I think most of us, once you get to a certain age, you either had cancer or you know somebody who had cancer or you lost somebody to cancer. And not to be a fearmonger, obviously everybody makes their own decisions, but just that one link between growth of certain estrogen sensitive breast cancer tumors and parabens, that's enough for me to avoid parabens. Not to mention that in most places in Europe, they have been already phased out from skincare production, and I'm not a fan and I avoid them. The next ingredient I avoid isn't necessarily dangerous. It's SLS. It's a sodium laureth sulfate. No matter how many takes I do, I stumble on that second word, so I'm just going to leave it. But it's SLS. The most common place you will see it is in shampoo. And it's a foaming agent. It's what gives shampoos and body washes that luscious, luxurious foam. And basically all it does is really overstrip the hair and the skin of the beneficial oils. And I color my hair with henna. And henna is something that fades quite fast sometimes. So I usually try to use color safe shampoos. And SLS definitely strips the hair color much faster than like SLS free shampoo. So I just avoid that. It's not really a dangerous ingredient as far as I know, but it's just not good for your hair or your skin. The next one is alcohol, and specifically the drying alcohols like denatured alcohols. So they are present in some products for texture purposes, like a lot of sunscreens will have them. And that's just to make the sunscreen lighter and more texturally pleasing. And in sunscreens specifically, I don't actually mind drying alcohols because usually sunscreen is applied on top of layers and layers of skincare and it doesn't really dry my skin out. But in things like toner or face wash or essence, so products that go directly on the skin as like a first or second layer, I definitely avoid alcohol. And same with sheet masks because I just don't want to expose my skin to this drying alcohol. Now, don't confuse that with hydrating alcohol. They're fatty alcohols like cetyl alcohol or cetyl alcohol. And I'm probably completely butchering the pronunciation, but I know what it looks like in the skincare ingredients. Anyway, but the drying alcohol, if it just says alcohol or like denatured alcohol, I do avoid those if I can, with the exception of some sunscreens. Sometimes it is okay. And it, of course, depends on the concentration of alcohol. And again, that's not something that's even listed on the label, but sometimes just by opening a bottle, you get a whiff of this really strong alcohol smell. And in that case, I don't even use the product. Speaking of smell, the next thing I try to avoid, which is very difficult to avoid, is unneeded fragrance. A lot of products have fragrance in the ingredients, and it doesn't matter if it's natural or not. It can be sensitizing, so which means that you might start out being absolutely okay with it, but the more you're exposed to it, the more likely you are to develop an allergic reaction. And once you get sensitized, so once you develop the allergic reaction, you will always have an allergic reaction to this fragrance. And the problem with fragrance is that's all it's listed as, just one word in the ingredients list, but it can include hundreds of different compounds, and most of them are usually proprietary blends, which is why they're not disclosed. So it just says fragrance and you have no idea what is added into it. And essential oils are natural and people tend to favor them because of that, but just because something's natural doesn't mean it's safe. One can definitely develop a reaction to essential oils. So if something's advertised as no artificial fragrance, that doesn't mean no fragrance. That just means no artificial fragrance. It can still have essential oils or other scenting agents. And another problem with fragrance is not just that it's sensitizing, it is what is called co-sensitizing, meaning that using products with fragrance, you're not just more likely to develop the allergy to the fragrance, but you're also more likely to develop the allergies to the other components of that product. And once you develop that allergy, once again, you can never use that ingredient again. And of course, it can be very difficult too to figure out exactly what it is that you're allergic to. So it can be very, very frustrating. It is so hard to avoid fragrance. So I usually kind of turn a blind eye because I haven't had any problems myself. But if I see something unscented, like if something comes in a scented version and unscented version, I'm going to always go for the unscented version. And I think more and more brands like Purito, for example, and Claire's, they listen to consumer feedback. So they started to release their products without fragrance and without essential oils. And I really hope that that is the trend that continues and that fragrance-free products become more and more prevalent. This next one I haven't seen in a while, thankfully, and it is triclosan. It is a product or an ingredient commonly found in antibacterial products like hand sanitizer and antibacterial soap, although I have seen it in things such as toothpaste, and it's banned in Europe. Triclosan is again an endocrine disruptor, just like some of these other things like parabens, and it can lead to impaired learning and memory, worsen allergies, affect thyroid, estrogen, and testosterone functions. You have to excuse me looking down occasionally. I have a little printed out thing with resources. I prepared for this video by jotting down my thoughts like I usually do, but some of these things are a little complex and I don't want to miss anything, so I refer to my notes. I will put in the description box all the sources that I have found, and of course you can find your own sources and do your own research. And of course remember that if you want to find something that says triclosan is bad, you can. If you want to find something that says triclosan is okay, you probably can. So again, this is just up to you to do the research and to decide what you're comfortable with. I remember even like as recently as 8 to 10 years ago, so many things had triclosan in them, like hand sanitizers, and then slowly it seems to have been getting phased out, possibly because of the European ban. I'm not sure, maybe finally people realize that it's actually a dangerous thing, but hopefully that's the trend that continues. And I haven't seen triclosan in a lot of things recently, but of course when it comes to personal care, things like toothpaste and soap and things we buy, mostly very natural products, so they wouldn't have triclosan in them in the first place. Well, this one is going to be probably a bit controversial. I mostly, if I can, avoid chemical SPF filters. So there are two types of filters when it comes to sunscreens. There's chemical and physical. The physical are zinc oxide and titanium oxide usually. They kind of have a bad rap for having like a white cast or a heavy greasy finish. However, now there's so many products that are completely physical filtered that are not greasy and not heavy. And some of them do have the drying alcohols, I think, to improve the texture. But to me, the trade-off between greasy and cakey white and something that's really light and airy and has a little alcohol in it, that's a no-brainer. I'll take the light, airy, alcohol-containing one. The chemical filters are all different. So the one that is kind of the worst one that I found the most toxic is oxybenzone. And again, it's an endocrine disruptor and it's a penetration enhancer, meaning it actually allows other things to penetrate your skin deeper. And when we're working with things like hormone disruptors, that's not something I want to penetrate my skin any deeper. So I avoid them as a rule. There are some newer ones now that are actually rated green and safe on EWG database. Like the one of the most recent Purito sunscreens, they released two. One is a chemical filtered one and one is a physical one. In the chemical one, the filters that they're using are newer, they're new to me, and they do seem to be safety rated as green. But still, I honestly just prefer the zinc and the titanium. I feel like those have been around for a long time, and if they had adverse effects, we'd probably hopefully know about them by now. Some people really do like these chemical filters because a lot of the times the texture is better, even better than the good textured physical filters. But to me, when it comes to health versus, you know, aesthetic appeal of products, I'm going to always kind of err on the side of health and choose something that might be a bit less attractive, but is safer. And again, there are all these innovative ways now to introduce the physical filters, and really there are many, many wonderful products that are not greasy and not cakey and still don't use chemical filters. Another thing I always avoid, and it might surprise you, is formaldehyde. So you might know about formaldehyde because it is something that is used in preserving corpses. It is something that is used in funeral homes. And why would anybody even be exposed to it, you ask? Outside of that, well, formaldehyde is often present in things like nail polish and in some cosmetics. And I'm not even going to debate the safety of it. I personally have to avoid it because I'm allergic to it. And I know that I'm allergic because I had allergy testing done. The whole panel where they put a whole bunch of little dots all over your back and put what feels like saran wrap on top of it, and then send you home for 2 miserable days to itch yourself into insanity until your appointment to check on what exactly you're allergic to. And formaldehyde resin is one of those things that I'm allergic to. So you might have seen labeling on products that says 5 free or 8 free. It gets to a point of like 21 free now, but the 5 free and the 8 free are basically free of 5 most common or 8 most common potentially problematic ingredients, and one of them is formaldehyde. So I definitely, if I look for nail care products, any kind of nail polish, I go for something that is 5 free or 8 free preferably, because I just don't need to be constantly exposed to stuff that I'm allergic to. And arguably, even if you're not allergic to it, you might not want to walk around with things that contain embalming fluid in them, but you know, it's a personal choice. I can't possibly cover all the potentially controversial ingredients in one video, and especially not being a scientist, I'm not going to try and talk about all of these things. So I will just leave you with 2 resources. One is the EWG Skin Deep database. And if you just Google EWG, and that stands for Environmental Working Group, Skin Deep, it'll take you to the website. And on that website, this is not a sponsored video whatsoever. I'm just sharing the resources that I use. So on that website, you can search for a specific product by name, and it will give you an overall rating from 0 being the most safe, all the way to 10 being kind of the most toxic, unsafe. And I think 0 to 2 is green, 3 to I think 6 or 7 is yellow, and then anything above 7, I think 7 is red. I don't venture out anywhere like past 4 or 5 ever, so I'm not sure about those other, you know, top. But you can look for specific products, you can click on them, it will show you all the ingredients if that product exists in the database, and it will show you their safety ratings, and it will talk briefly about like if it has endocrine toxicity or reproductive toxicity or anything else, and then how strong the data are that back this up. You can also on there search for a specific ingredient one by one, like I don't know, methyl paraben or anything else that you want, BHT, whatever interests you. You can search and read about that ingredient. Now, for us K-beauty and J-beauty lovers, maybe even a more useful site is CosDNA. That's COS, like cosmetics, and then DNA.com. And CosDNA has a lot more of Korean beauty products listed on there. So you might actually have a much better chance of finding your specific product that you're interested in on CosDNA versus EWG. EWG will have a lot more like American brands or North American brands on there, but CosDNA has a lot more Korean beauty. And another awesome thing on CosDNA, there's a little tab on there that's called Analyze Cosmetics. And you can copy an ingredients list, for example, from one of my reviews. You can just take the whole ingredients list, paste it into that Analyze Cosmetics window, and hit Analyze, and it will give you a breakout of every ingredient, of what it does, and how safe or toxic or non-toxic it is, which is amazing because if the database doesn't list specifically the product that you're looking for, but you still want to know what everything in that product is rated as, on EWG you would have to search each individual ingredient one by one. That can be maddening, but on CosDNA you can paste in the entire ingredients list and see everything. And then if that product isn't in their database, you can go ahead and do the Good Samaritan thing and fill in what product that is, what brand, and actually have the database save it. So of course that means that everything on CosDNA as far as ingredients list is user provided. So if you are relying on that for like a complete list of ingredients for something, you have to remember that somebody provided that list, so they could have omitted something. But in my experience, it's mostly pretty accurate. So those are the two resources that I use. And of course, the good old Google is pretty nice. You know, sometimes just Googling an ingredient will take you to some articles to tell you what it does, and you can review the safety things and so on. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Let me know if there's something that I can answer, or if you have some ingredients that you avoid. Maybe I need to expand this list. This isn't all inclusive. There's probably something I'm forgetting, but these are the ones that came to mind as I thought about this video in the last couple of weeks. So I hope you're doing great. I hope your holiday season is lovely and non-stressful and filled with family and friends and lots of good food, but not too much. I will see you next Saturday. Until then, I hope you remember to always listen to your skin. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.